In what ways does your media product you use develop or challenge forms of real media products?
But with help of a mysterious pill that enables the user to access 100% of his brain abilities. A struggling writer becomes a financial wizard, but it also puts him in a new world with lots of dangers. The reason why I've chosen Limitless is due to its close relationship with drugs. The concept of the film is similar to mine as they both take a drug and after that there are people that want to kill them. Both the drugs are pill form, which both highlights the dangers of drugs. Another similarity is that both of the pills allow them to access a further part of their mind. Hers only allows her to see the killer, but he uses his beneficially and uses it to make money and have fun. My media challenges this film as his pill enables him to fulfill his plans and achieve his goals even though it nearly kills him. It saves his life for multiple occasions. The pill in my film makes her see this man who actually turns out to be real, and eventually kills her. Trainspotting is about someone called Renton who is deeply immersed in the Edinburgh drug scene. He tries to clean up and get out, despite the allure of drugs and the influence of friends. My film is similar to this film as they both have graphical scenes of weird drug addictions and both have scenes with bad trips. My film challenges Trainspotting as it is much more graphical and more inside his head, unlike the hallucinogen. Trainspotting is more about heroin addiction. Mine is more about what it's like being on the drug. The hallucinogen is more specific to that moment in time, unlike Trainspotting. The Tall Man. When her child goes missing, a mother looks to unravel the legend of the Tall Man, an entity who allegedly abducts children. The Tall Man uses a mysterious killer much like the hallucinogen, and both the killers appear from nowhere and start to ruin lives. There are many differences through as The Tall Man is about a woman who goes after the killer but is later haunted by him. On the other hand, there are many similarities, as both films uses the theme of isolation and they are both completely alone and helpless. Skins. The story of a group of British teens who are trying to grow up and find love and happiness despite questionable parenting and teachers who more want to be friends/lovers rather than authority figures. Skins has lots of similarities to my thriller. Even though it's a television series and has no thriller attributes, they are closely linked. It's firstly similar to my film, as the characters are of a similar age range and are both have a close network of friends. Both sets of media follow one character and their problems. Even though Skins may be more realistic, they are both seen throughout the character's eyes. Skins uses drugs, as well as many characters have drug addictions, and this is becoming more and more popular in media. Drugs are now given a Hollywood treatment and seen in a good way of enhancing your night out. This is bad as many people are seeing this type of media of this form, and are wanting to try it. The hallucinogen does not make drugs look glamorous as the pill itself kills the girl. The main character in my film has many personality traits like Kathy and resorts to drugs as her only way of escaping. What does your media product represent particular social groups? Fred the Killer. Fred is a young 14-year-old. I used a young actor as it gives the impression that he's innocent and you wouldn't think at first he's the killer. In many thriller films they use younger actors. The reason for this, I believe, is due to the fact youth don't often have a voice, nor do their opinions matter either. This means that they can come across sinister as they are silent in our society. They are easily persuaded as well as so this might link to the fact they are possessed and the devil can easily get into their mind. Also, the innocence of children can across is eerie in certain situations. Children are commonly used in films like Sinister as they are seen to be spooky. Fred is a white British citizen. This is important as this links him to Florence as they're both white, and this means they could potentially be related. Florence is a young independent woman. This is important as she's alone and has no one else to help her. I use the girl as this gives off a representation of a dumb blonde, which is commonly used in horror films, like the iconic scene in Scream with Tatum's death or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Women are often treated as the victim of a film, and men are often the killer. This is most likely down to when women didn't have equal rights. Males seen as more dominant characters, and the only time women are seen as the hero characters when they are seen to be more masculine or dress more like a male. This is clearly seen in case 39 when the woman is dressed more in male clothing. The way we look at a woman now has changed since the introduction of feminism. Florence is a white British citizen. This is important as it shows that she's come from the same area as all her friends and can clearly distinguish who she's mates with as they are all a similar age and background. It is a bit like In-Betweeners in the way that it's set in a London suburban town called Crouch End. This is important as it will be my target audience, teenagers and young adults, as it will be easier for them to sympathise with Florence's character.
What kind of media institution might distribute your media product and why?
I believe that Universal Studios would want to distribute my film, as it fits very much with their previous films. As many of their thriller/horror films are psychological, and which are like mine, they all try and aim their film to the same target audience as me. This target market would be aged between older teenagers and young adults. I aimed my film at this age group as it's easier for them to relate to the film. In 2013, Universal Studios distributed a horror film called Mama. This is similar to my film, in the way they both use children as evil characters. Another film similar to mine is The Unfriended. Unfriended is about a group of teenagers who are all on the internet on Skype, and this strange unheard of person pops up into their conference call, but then starts talking about their friend who died exactly a year ago that day. My film has got many similarities to this film, in the way that the group of friends are so close and tries to get it through all together, but despite this does not succeed. The close network of friends is a theme I focused on throughout my film, and the idea of friendship is key. Shaun of the Dead has a connection to my film. Even though it could be called a comedy, the location of the film is the same as mine, a suburban town in North London called Crouch End. This is important to my film as it's very bland, and I don't want the concept of the film to be outshadowed by the location of the film. This will be a deciding factor in my eyes for Universal to distribute my film, as they will know the area and know what to do, and they can use local actors and facilities. Universal would back my film, as it's very similar to the films they have already released and would have been successful in the industry. They would also want to distribute my thriller, as they have many British films signed with the company and want to invest into a growing business and films that are becoming so successful across the world, not just in the United Kingdom. They have distributed British films such as About Time and Legend. What would be the audience for your media product? The ideal age of my audience would be young adults and older teenagers. I feel like this age range would find the film most interesting, as they would find it easier to put themselves into the girls' shoes. They can also relate to my film due to the social reasons of the film. Teenagers will also be more appropriate to my target, as they would be scared when watching the film. The theme of isolation is key in my film, and many teachers can feel alone and useless. The theme of friendship is also key in my film, as many people will struggle to cope doing anything without their friends. Florence, the main character, is in a close network of friends and is able to tell them her problems, even if they don't believe her at first. There are many issues for aiming my film at teenagers, as many parents won't allow their children to watch it, and most people won't want to watch it. There is not an ideal gender for my thriller, as both males and females can enjoy it. The film isn't made with a specific gender in mind. This is to allow a greater audience to view my film and create more money. There's not a certain type of culture either, as my film will hopefully be distributed across the world, as I want as many people as possible to see my media product. There will be some issues with distributing it to everyone, as places like North Korea or rural places won't be able to relate to any characters and will find it difficult to get into the film or even to access the film. There isn't a specific personality either. Someone will need to have to watch my film either. It's for everyone of all ages and all backgrounds. It just depends on certain people will enjoy it. It more depends on their own background. My target audience would be people who watch TV series like Skins and Misfits. How did you attract/address your audience? I used my audience research to help me create and develop my thriller. I used a questionnaire and interviews to find out ways and how to develop and improve my thriller. The questionnaire enabled me to ask questions such as, what is your favourite subgenre of a thriller? I found this question most useful as I worked out that action was the most popular subgenre, but I knew this type of thriller would be very hard to film considering I have no budget, nor do I have access to special effects. I found out psychological thrillers and mystery were also very popular, so I thought it would be best if I contrasted both of the genres. I feel, will give me an edge on other thrillers, as it uses two subgenres instead of just one. I also found out that my audience research that people prefer psychological scares than jump scares. I found this most useful as I was planning to use many jump scares in my thriller, but I feel like if I used them this would make the film less scary, as the jump scares there's nothing to be frightened of. I asked multiple questions about the themes of my thriller, and the most important out of all of them was friendship, isolation and desperation. Most thought that the idea of friendship would be interesting in a thriller, as it's not often highlighted in films like mine. Some thought the idea of isolation, though, might contrast with the themes that I have used. In my interviews, I asked many questions about the soundtrack in the background. Many thought it would be best if I build up sound to portray the killer's appearance becoming more and more frequent. I used this idea, added new and different sound as the opening sequence continued. They also thought a slow bass drum at the start of the sequence worked well in the party scene as it built up tension and came across that it was at an edgy party. I also asked whether the use of a piano sound would be beneficial. Many said yes, and they agreed with me, and it added an eerie element to my soundtrack. What have you learnt about technologies from the process of constructing this product? I had to use a wide range of different technologies whilst constructing this project. For example, the first thing I had to use was Blogger. Blogger is a self-publishing website that allows people to post blogs on anything they desire. This was relatively easy to pick up, as I use social media commonly, and Blogger is very similar to stuff like Facebook. I've been blogging about twice a week for the last 6 months, and this is becoming part of my weekly routine. The second thing I had to use was the camera. The camera I used was a small HD 1080p Panasonic. It wasn't anything professional, but it allowed me to film all the shots I needed. This was more tricky, as I have never had to record something like this before. I feel like I rose up to the challenge of using a camera, as I use a wide range of shots and angles. I originally thought that keeping the camera still without a tripod would be easy, but I was clearly mistaken. Filming the party scene, I found it was easier, as I wanted the camera to be shaky, and to give the impression that the party was chaotic and is not relaxed. We used Apple Macs to edit and create the opening sequence. The software we had to use was Final Cut Pro. Final Cut Pro is an editing program which was developed by Apple and allows you to insert transitions, filters, and change the speed of the film, insert sound, and even add titles. This was most challenging to use, as I had never used an editing program like this before. The first thing I had to do was crop and put all together my footage. This was challenging as I had to pick only certain shots and cut many others. At first, when I put my footage together, there was there was a very loose storyline, and many shots didn't fit in with the storyline. Once I had all my footage, I had to edit it. The software made this relatively easy, as I firstly changed the shot of a flashing strobe light so it had a fisheye effect. I did this to create an aura of confusion and keep the audience intrigued. I then had to speed up the party scene. I feel like this was effective as it came across the party was much more chaotic than the original shot. I then had to slow down the shot of Florence on the floor. I did this so the audience could see her facial expression and portray everything's becoming more bizarre in her head after the pill. After I did this, I had to put a blue filter on some of the shots. This was to make the audience feel cold and uncomfortable when they see these shots. I finally had to add titles to my opening sequence. I spent some time trying to find the correct font. I used a font called Minimal. This was to keep it basic so people would focus more on the video and less on who created it. Finally, I used GarageBand for the soundtrack on my thriller. GarageBand is a piece of software that allows the user to create music by using loops or creating your own recordings. It took me 5 different songs until I found the one I wanted to use. I firstly used a low bass drum to make the party scene seem more electric. Then I added a light piano sound. This was to create an eerie effect. I added many other beats as I continued. This was to help build up tension as my opening scene continued. Looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you have learned in the progression from it to the full product? The preliminary task was something I put some time in to create. When I first saw a video of a preliminary task, I thought it would be very challenging at first, but it was easier and more entertaining than I thought it would be. I found the preliminary task useful firstly, as it allowed me to use the equipment for the first time. This was very important, as it was the first time using a camera like that. Using the camera was very easy at first. The main thing I learnt during this process was that the use of multiple shots looks a lot better than one continuous shot. This is due to the fact that one continuous shot is seen as being boring, and you cannot portray it as many emotions or character attributes with only one shot. It was the first time using Final Cut Pro as well. Final Cut Pro is an editing software on an Apple Mac. We didn't have to do much with the footage as we only had to cut it and put it together. This was challenging as finding the correct timing of when Oren touches the door to the next shot of him opening it from the other room. I was very uncertain when I started the preliminary task. I had no idea to expect. I personally feel like the preliminary task was a waste of time, as we could have spent it working on our evaluation or editing our video.